what all things that can be analyzed in arson and explosive investigations. Also, how, with utmost care and precaution, a forensic investigator has to work upon and collect all the evidences. In this part 2, we will look into the another amazing case shared by Mr. Robert Schaal and our follow-up questions to the expert.
Was a retirement center in Georgia, and this was there was a lot of fire investigators involved in this one. I actually did not attend the scene. I got involved about a year or so after the event and kind of did an assessment based on previous investigations and scene photographs and whatnot. So these are some early pictures of the fire. We see the fire vented through the roof. Ultimately, this area is going to be our area of origin. This was a recreation room. This was a residential apartment. And that comes into play as we do our investigation. So this is just a closer up. We see significant fire in the attic, no fire in the room here, no fire in the room here. This air conditioner, which some parties thought was involved, in my opinion, doesn't exhibit any indication of fire cause, but we'll kind of get into some of the other indicators as we move through. But early fire photos like this are certainly useful in assessing what people saw. It's also a test of, your eyewitness tells you something. Is it supported by other evidence, whether it be video surveillance, photograph, anything? All of this information is critically important to the overall fire investigation process. So again, this is just a little bit more close up. You kind of see fire damage in the wall, certainly heavy fire damage in the attic, but none really in the apartments. But you can see as it gets in the attic, it does start spreading along, moving left and right, involving more of the attic void roof space, ultimately taking the roof off of the structure. So this is the aftermath. Obviously, it ran the whole building and took the roof off. But again, those early photos are useful because we know the fire didn't start down here because we have video, we have photographs of this area. So early on, you narrow the area you need to look at down. So that's why those early photographs are important. So it really, allows you to collapse the scene down where you don't have as much area to really look at because you've ruled it out. So this is it's a portable terminal air conditioner or a packaged terminal air conditioner. PTAC is what they're called here in the United States, typically in hotels and in commercial structures like this. But you start looking at the mass loss on the header above it. There's no indication that heat was traveling from the air conditioner upward, burning this. This is all external coming in towards the air conditioner. You start looking at the internal workings of the air conditioner, and they're still in substantially good shape. This is the outside material of that header. More damage on the outside than on the inside. And again, indication of heat and fire attack this way versus coming from in the wall outward. You can kind of almost see a V pattern on this air conditioner right here where it was impacted by heat. But in those early photos, we didn't see fire coming out of here, and there was no fire reported by witnesses spreading up the side of the building. This is the construction of this building was wood framed, and it had a synthetic stucco material which is applied over an expanded polystyrene styrofoam type board beneath this. So there was no evidence that it was burning on the outside of the structure upward. It was all concealed fire, ultimately got in the attic and then breached the attic. So this is an aerial view of our area of interest and origin. So this was a recreational room, and this was a residence apartment. To me, as you start looking at this would have been a wooden header that would have spanned all the way across here, and it would have intersected with this wall here. So we have material missing all in this area, but it's also directional. We have more damage on this side of this than this side. So it's all indication to me that the fire was traveling this way and then ultimately got up into the attic and then took the roof off the structure. So again, this is a close-up of that header. You see the damage, less damage on this inside front versus the outside that we saw a few minutes ago. But again, no indication that the air conditioner was transferring heat to this wooden framing. So this is that wall void. This is that residential apartment. This would have been to outside, and then the air conditioner recreation room would have been back a couple feet over here. So as we identify areas of interest and items of evidence, we try and document their size and their positioning. Here, somebody used a surveying tape on it, measuring how big it was, just so you can assess that later and use that as part of your scene documentation. Again, as you pull it out, you see the internal workings are damaged, but really, in my opinion, it's not consistent with fire starting in this unit and spreading outward. Really not a lot of melting, just some soot buildup. No melting of the metal. There was a plastic fan shroud and plastic fan blade that obviously melted, but you weren't melting metal. No progression from within this unit outward. So in my opinion, I think the patterns did not support fire emanating from this unit, and it could be eliminated as a fire cause. So now we're in the residential apartment looking back. You can see the air conditioner's been removed here. Really no damage on the inside of it here. They do some scene reconstruction and they collect some of the electrical branch circuit wiring, the receptacles, stuff like that to preserve it for later use in court, later use for analysis in a more controlled environment at somebody's laboratory or wherever. So it preserves the scene so others can look at it later should there be a need or interest. So this is just some close-ups. You can see that this is the edge of that air conditioner header, and this side would have been concealed within that wall that abuts the residential apartment. And you see it's significantly damaged. And then this would be the outside, and that's the inside. But when we start looking at the inside where the air conditioner was, there's no thermal damage. So there's no damage consistent with fire emanating from the air conditioner outward. All of this damage and what we see on the front is an indication of fire attack from the left to the right. So again, to me, this evidence here made it inconsistent that the fire started in the air conditioner. So one other minor case study I have is a intentionally set fire in Birmingham, Alabama that I worked. Through my investigation, I ultimately narrowed the fire down to this room through fire pattern analysis. This room had the most damage. 360 supported that. Fire patterns to the rest of the residents did. But here we also used some fluorescent chalk to help outline where furniture would have been. And I apologize for some moisture and some light affecting the camera, but you can see that we use the differentiation of mass damage, mass loss on the studs. See, we have more damage here, a little bit less as we go around. And this damage is not going to happen until we get the sheathing of the wall. Here in the United States, we use a lot of gypsum board, sheetrock, drywall, whatever you want to call it, and it protects the subsurface for 30, 45 minutes or so, unless something else happens to it. But once it fails, then we start getting damage. So we use this again to help us identify that our fire was probably somewhere back in this area. And again, we can use damage to the roof joists, ceiling studs, and then you see there's more damage in this area compared to here. So again, it's an indication that the fire burned longer or hotter in this area, and probably hotter. So we use this damage to assess, did the fire start over here or did the fire start over here? Well, this damage indicates the fire probably started over in this region, not in the ceiling, but in the corresponding area down here. And this had greater impact of heat, smoke, hot byproducts than this area. So again, that's what, we use the patterns to narrow down where the fire started. Then we can start assessing what might have caused it. And even though this fire here was potentially an intentionally set fire, we had some items in the room. I don't think you can see them right now, but there was a space heater. You have to look at that and eliminate that. There was an extension cord and relocatable power tap plugged in here that was run through here. So you have to look at all the items in a particular area and eliminate them before you can ultimately get to a fire cause. So well, the first thing you want to do is make sure that it's safe to enter. There's kind of two aspects of fire investigation. You have the fire investigation team that may go with firefighters or suppression crews. Then you have people like me that come after the fact for insurance companies or lawyers or whatever. But the first thing you want to do is do a scene assessment, make sure it's safe to enter. Is it structurally sound? Have the utilities been made safe? Have you turned off the power? Have you shut off the gas valve? Make sure the fire's out. You don't want anybody to get hurt. So after the scene is safe, then you will start your 360-degree outside, kind of making notes of where the fire might have impacted the building, where was it getting its air into the fire, where was hot smoke and gas coming out of the fire, and then move inside to begin your investigation. Well, it's the same. It Once you determine the area of origin, then you can start assessing for cause. And if you think you had a chemical agent or an ignitable liquid or liquid accelerant, then you could take debris samples. Here we typically package those in unused metal cans, similar to a paint can. You would take a debris sample, make sure you seal it properly, and then you would take it to a forensic chemist who would do gas chromatograph, mass spectrometry, and then tell you if there was any petroleum products in it based on ASTM guidelines or whatever testing standards your laboratories follow. Somebody's interested in fire investigation. My degree was in criminal justice, but that just was my initial interest in getting involved in law enforcement. I was fortunate enough to get hired by ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, right out of college. That got me involved in law enforcement, and then I ultimately specialized in fire investigation. A good understanding of chemistry. There is some mathematics involved if you get into fire dynamics equations and stuff like that. There's a specialized degree in fire protection engineering, which is more engineering discipline, but there's certainly crossover into the fire investigation field. So more science-based fields would give you a good foundation to get involved in fire investigation. Like a debris sample, again, you're going to wear, first make sure your tools are clean before you get to the scene, before you collect a sample, because you don't want cross-contamination. You'll use clean latex gloves. You'll collect a debris sample, then you'll seal your can, take off your gloves. You put the proper security tape on the can, take it to the lab. If you have something else of interest, whether it be tire track, fingerprint, you would use the appropriate protocols for collecting that type of evidence. Biological evidence, whether it be blood or other bodily fluids, again, you would use universal precautions and use appropriate collection techniques. In what I do now, we do more, say, artifacts, whether it be a heater or an outlet. So we will document where it was, we'll document collection, we'll put it in a secure sealed container or wrap it in plastic type security tape to preserve it. In the public sector, what a lot of fire investigators or criminal units do is they have a crime scene unit or a CSI or laboratory-based person. They come out and say, hey, I want this collected, and then they use their expertise to collect it for them. But yes, you have to make sure that you utilize proper evidence collection techniques. There's an organization here that I'm a member of called the International Association of Arson Investigators, and on their website they have a evidence collection handbook. So it talks about the various types of evidence that you may encounter in fire investigation, and it kind of gives you guidelines on how to collect it. And then they also host a distance learning platform called cfitrainer.net. It's a free online training platform. There's about 73 modules on there right now on various fire investigation topics. And it's a good source for people that may have an interest in becoming involved in fire investigation. to kind of get some training in the various topics that may help you out if you want to go into this field. Well, certainly there's sensitivities if there's a fatality or a casualty. So you want to treat the body with the utmost respect, but you also have to take into consider that there may be some forensic value or forensic evidence. So it kind of goes two ways. I know of cases where, you know, the body or the decedent is dealt with first, where, you know, out of respect, you remove them and then you begin your fire investigation. But I also know of big cases where, because it was so critical, they kind of processed the scene and processed the bodies as they got to them. It was an unfortunate incident where there were 5 or 6 fatalities. So they processed the bodies as they got to them. But again, you have to do it with utmost respect, but again, appreciate that there may be forensic value. If there is forensic value, again, you can do things like bag the hands and the extremities prior to putting them into the body container, and then take them to a laboratory where you can, you know, see if there's any trace evidence of value. In some instances, there may be, they do have fire patterns that may be of value. So hopefully prior to them being removed from the scene, they're properly photographed and documented. So even if they do remove them out of respect, we can get the patterns and use that as part of our investigation later. I was just using a Theta, a Ricoh Theta camera. It's very inexpensive. I mean, they had, like, the one I have is probably like $400. They have a newer one called the Theta V, which is, or Theta Z. I think it's about $1,000, but a lot of people use Matterport too, which does like 360 spherical, and it does cloud point, and it'll actually build out a sketch and you can do measurements from it. But for my purposes, I was just using the Theta, and this is the first time I've used it teaching like this. So I hope it was, I hope it came across well and was useful. And I think that's the, and I think more and more people are starting to use the 3D or 360 degree just for that reason, because when you present your findings to somebody else, they can almost feel like they were there. And a lot, you know, from a case perspective, it allows you to bring others there, or juries there, or whomever needs to be there. But from a training perspective, you can also use these with 3D virtual reality type stuff, where, you know, you put it into the goggles and you feel like you're there. So I think it's invaluable. It really helps you orient yourself to the scene and kind of get a better picture than just a series of still.
Thank you for watching our video. If you liked our initiative, please like, share and subscribe to the Forensic Corner for more of such great content.